Have you ever felt like something invisible is holding you back? Like every time you try to rise, something drags you down again and again. Have you ever cleaned your house but felt the atmosphere was still heavy? Let me ask you, when was the last time you spiritually cleaned your life, not just your space? There is power in small actions when they're rooted in great faith. People think transformation always comes through fire or thunder, but sometimes the biggest shift happens with something as simple as salt in a toilet. Yes, salt, a symbol of purity, a spiritual agent of change, an ancient weapon against darkness, confusion, and limitation. You're not doing witchcraft. You're reclaiming what was always yours. You're aligning your outer action with inner authority. Every curse spoken or unspoken bows before a life rooted in sacred intention. When you put that salt down the drain, you're telling heaven, I'm ready to flush out everything that was never mine to carry. There are invisible chains that travel through generations, patterns that don't belong to you but somehow live through you. They whisper lies like you'll never make it, or this is just who your family is. No more. That cycle ends with you. When you take action, symbolic or spiritual, you're not being superstitious, you're being strategic. You're stepping into your role as someone who no longer negotiates with bondage. You're choosing clarity over chaos, wholeness over wounds. And trust, when heaven sees faith, heaven responds. Salt in ancient days was more than seasoning. It was a covenant, a cleanser. When you use it with intention, you're declaring this house is sacred, this body is mine. This life is under divine jurisdiction. You don't need sage, smoke, or sound bowls if your heart is aligned. All you need is faith the size of a mustard seed and a God who honors even the smallest act of obedience. Don't underestimate the environment you're living in. Spirits, energies, words, they linger. And if you keep wondering why you're exhausted, stuck, anxious for no reason, it might not be psychological. It might be spiritual. Flush the bitterness. Flush the curse. Flush the doubt. And watch what happens when you make space for what's divine. Sometimes God is waiting for a movement, not just a prayer, a physical act that speaks louder than fear. That's why salt in the toilet matters. It's not magic, it's motion. It's you saying, no more shadows in my life. No more residue in my purpose. I'm not cleaning for aesthetics, I'm cleaning for alignment. Every house has hidden corners, and every soul does too. What are you hiding that needs to be flushed? What anger, what betrayal, what secret shame? God won't take what you won't release. But the moment you say, I'm done, heaven says, let's begin. It's not about the toilet. It's about your trust. The physical represents the spiritual. The small represents the sacred. God has already given you authority, but unused authority is silent, and silence keeps curses alive. The moment you act, even if it's just pouring salt, you're declaring, I will no longer partner with what's been killing me in silence. You don't need to scream, you just need to move. Heaven doesn't wait for the loud, it responds to the bold. There are curses that hide behind comfort, patterns that look like personality. But once you say, I'm ready to break what broke me, even your atmosphere starts to obey. Watch how peace returns, how doors open, how enemies vanish. You'll see that it wasn't a coincidence, it was covenant. God moves when you do. Even Jesus asked people to pick up their mat. Naaman had to dip in the Jordan. Moses had to stretch his hand. Your job is to move in faith. His job is to move mountains. The salt is your yes. The toilet is your release. And the result, freedom. You've waited for change, but change is waiting for you. Not in noise, but in action. You may not feel different the first time. Do it anyway. Break the fear of looking foolish. Faith always looks foolish to the faithless. But when the result comes, even your doubters will ask how you did it. And your only answer will be, God did what only he could do when I did what only I was called to do. This is not a gimmick. This is a gateway. God doesn't bless superstition, he blesses sincerity. Put salt in your toilet if you must. Not because it's trending, but because you're tired of tolerating what's been haunting you. Watch your environment shift. Watch clarity return. Watch confusion flee. God is waiting. And the moment you flush the past, heaven will pour the future. So what are you still holding on to? What are you ready to let go of? What curse ends with you today? Break every curse. Flush every lie. And watch what God does next. When you take a simple, Intentional action rooted in unshakable faith. You're not just moving your hand, you're shaking the heavens. The world teaches you to wait for miracles from the sky, but sometimes God waits for a symbol from you. One movement, one act of obedience, one moment of trust, that's all it takes to break open the dam holding back your blessings. You pour salt not because of superstition, but because your spirit is ready to say enough. The action tells heaven that you're not playing with your purpose anymore. You're not begging. You're not bargaining. You're declaring war on every invisible force stealing your peace. You're showing the universe that you've aligned your will with divine will. And when that happens, doors open, chains fall, and curses evaporate. Your authority becomes visible. Your strength becomes undeniable. It's not about the salt, it's about the signal. Faith without movement is dormant. But faith that acts even in simplicity wakes up the supernatural. Don't wait for a perfect sign. Become the sign. Be bold enough to act small and watch heaven respond big. Salt has always carried power beyond the kitchen. It was a sacred element in ancient covenants representing purity, preservation, and permanence. In the unseen realm, salt speaks louder than words. It tells every unclean presence, you don't belong here. It sends a message of order, of spiritual sanitation, of divine territory. When you place it with intention, you're not seasoning a space, you're sealing it. You're reminding your atmosphere who has dominion here. Salt doesn't just absorb physical impurities, it absorbs spiritual residue too. You're inviting clarity where there was confusion. You're commanding stillness where there was chaos. Salt carries memory, message, and movement. And when used with conviction, it becomes a declaration of alignment. It doesn't beg darkness to leave, it forces it out. It reminds every curse, hex, and cycle that the covenant is stronger than the contamination. Use it boldly, not as a ritual, but as a reminder you are covered, cleansed, and claimed by something far greater than fear. You are not the curse you inherited. You are the cure that ends it. Generational patterns, whether poverty, addiction, failure, or fear, can live undetected until someone says no more, and that someone is you. The dysfunction may have started before you, but it must end with you. You don't need to scream at demons. You don't need to seminar. You just need to act in agreement with what God already promised, freedom. When you pour salt into the lowest part of your home, the toilet, you are spiritually saying, I refuse to carry what didn't begin with me. You're flushing out the lie that you must suffer because your family did. You're silencing every echo of limitation passed down through generations. What was inherited through silence can be broken through action. Don't be afraid to offend your past. You were never born to repeat it. You were born to redeem it. And every move you make in faith is a sword cutting through cycles. People look for lightning strikes when they should look at their hands. A single, small act done in faith can unravel years of spiritual entanglement. That's the paradox of God's kingdom. What's small in the physical becomes mighty in the spirit. Pouring salt in your toilet isn't about superstition, it's about spiritual engagement. It's a trigger for transformation. Heaven doesn't ask for spectacle, it asks for sincerity. When your inner conviction meets your outer action, the result is breakthrough. That salt represents decision. It says, I've tolerated this long enough. It's you walking in your authority without needing applause. It's you telling hell, I don't need your permission to be free. That moment, small as it seems, redefines your future. Don't ignore the little things. The curse you're fighting didn't enter with a roar, it crept in silently. And it will exit the same way, quietly, decisively, through one act of focused faith. Your home is more than walls and furniture. It's a reflection of your spiritual climate. When you cleanse your physical space with intentional acts, you are sending signals into the spiritual realm. You're saying this is a no-fly zone for darkness. Salt in your toilet is not about plumbing, it's about permission. What you allow stays. What you address flees. Many live in haunted atmospheres, unaware that old energy is still echoing through their rooms. Past arguments, pain, betrayal, fear, they linger. And the toilet, the lowest place, is often the last to be spiritually addressed. But when you sanctify even the unseen corners, you invite divine order into every part of your existence. You create an atmosphere where peace is native, not foreign. And peace doesn't just visit, it dwells. Don't just clean for guests, clean for God. Make your space a sanctuary and heaven will make it a station of blessing. There is a lie that says your bloodline defines your future. But heaven says your obedience defines your freedom. You don't have to be who they were. You don't have to carry their fears, their poverty, their addiction, their regret. You were born into a pattern so you could be the one to break it. And breaking it doesn't require noise, it requires intention. Salt in your toilet might look crazy to others, but to you, it's covenant. It's a cry of freedom. It's you standing in the middle of generations and saying, this ends here. You don't need to know every curse to cancel them. You just need to know your power. And once you act from that awareness, cycles begin to shatter. Heaven honors bold faith, even if it's silent, even if it's misunderstood. You are not bound by history. You are sent to rewrite it. Your action today is your legacy tomorrow. Sometimes the reason you're stuck isn't because you're lazy or unworthy. It's because something unseen is feeding off your passivity. Spiritual atmospheres are shaped by what you allow and what you ignore. And if your environment feels heavy, stagnant, or cursed, it may be time to act. The act of putting salt in your toilet is not mystical, it's prophetic. You're reclaiming control over what has silently ruled your space. You're taking authority without apology. You're saying, this body, this house, this future belongs to the light. When you move with faith, even in something small, you awaken divine assistance. Force a shift. Path clear. Your soul breathes again. Don't underestimate the power of presence, the presence you invite, and the one you expel. Your surroundings are a mirror. Clean the mirror and watch your reflection transform. Sometimes the greatest curse is comfort. Shake it, salt it, flush it. There is a difference between belief and boldness. Many believe in change, but few move like it's already happening. Faith without action is a locked door with the key still in your pocket. Movement creates miracles. Pouring salt with purpose isn't about magic, it's about alignment. You're not casting a spell. You're casting off fear. When you move in faith, you create a new rhythm. Heaven dances to boldness. The salt is your declaration, I will not be a prisoner to patterns. It's you saying, I've heard the whispers, I felt the weight, but today I rise. You don't need others to understand. Their validation is not your fuel. You need to know within yourself that you've taken a step beyond victimhood into victory. The salt doesn't save you. It signals that you're ready to be saved. Movement matters. Even the smallest ripple breaks the stillest water. Be the ripple. Heaven watches not just what you believe, but what you do with what you believe. Action and faith is louder than any desperate prayer. The divine responds not to emotional panic, but to spiritual precision. The moment you pour salt with full belief, you are making a legal declaration in the spirit realm. You're testifying that no longer will curses reside where faith now lies. You're setting up a court in your home where truth wins and lies dissolve. The bold move becomes a spiritual shift. Don't just cry for freedom, act like it's already yours. Heaven doesn't wait for perfection, it waits for pursuit. And the moment you pursue purity, peace, and promise through any physical act, you've built an altar. God meets people at altars, even if it's a toilet, especially if it's in the private place where no one's watching, where only your sincerity remains. That's where transformation begins. Sometimes people cry for change but refuse to move. They pray but never act. They fast but stay passive. But the supernatural is not stirred by words alone, it's stirred by evidence of trust. Salt in the toilet is evidence, a step, a symbol. It says, I don't need to wait for permission. It tells every curse I caught you. And once you catch a curse in the act, you flush it. You don't debate it. You don't analyze it. You cast it out. The smallest action in truth is greater than the biggest wish and fear. Salt is not the power your obedience is. It is your agreement with heaven that creates movement. You won't always feel something, but you'll always trigger something. Move anyway. Watch your peace return. Your sleep deepen. Your mind sharpen. One act opens the gate. The curse has no defense against the faithful heart in motion. What you do in the secret places determines what manifests in your public life. When you drop that salt into the unseen drain, you're sending a message to both heaven and hell. This territory belongs to the divine. Every hidden fear, every quiet doubt, every lingering energy, flush it. What you let stay will rule you. What you confront will flee. And the most powerful battles are won not with loud declarations, but with private decisions. You don't need to post it, prove it, or parade it. Just pour the salt and walk away in power. God doesn't bless performances. He honors purity. He moves when you move with no audience, no applause, just alignment. That salt, simple as it seems, becomes a statement in the spirit realm. I will not negotiate with anything that keeps me bound. Don't wait for deliverance from the outside. Deliver yourself from within. The moment you flush what you're finished with, the heavens begin to fill you with what you were destined for. Power isn't always in the shout, it's often in the silence. When you act wisely and without announcement, you step into a dimension where wisdom outlasts warfare. You're not fighting shadows with fists, you're disarming them with symbols. Salt doesn't scream, but it speaks. It doesn't battle, but it binds. You're using an ancient truth to disarm a present lie. You're walking in a sacred strategy, not superstition. Some think they need to be loud to be free, but true dominion is quiet, calm, and conscious. When you use salt with faith, you're not reacting to fear, you're responding to divine intelligence. You're saying, I understand what I carry. I know who I am. And curses, whether generational or situational, cannot survive around someone who knows their power. You don't have to match the chaos. You just have to anchor the peace. Let your wisdom work silently. Let your authority echo through your actions. Power moves in precision, not panic. Your home is an altar, whether you treat it like one or not. Every object, every corner, every whisper within its walls holds a frequency. If your space has been heavy, dark, or confusing, perhaps it's not what you see, it's what you've never addressed. Spiritual clutter is real. Energy lingers, pain settles, but salt doesn't just purify, it establishes. It resets the tone of a place. When you drop it into the unseen parts of your environment, you are reclaiming your sanctuary. You're announcing only peace is welcome here. You don't need to be an expert in spiritual warfare. You just need to be aware. Every cleansing starts with awareness. Every blessing flows from intention. You can host divine presence in a space where curses are still comfortable. When you act in faith, even with salt, you are tearing down every altar that wasn't built in truth. You're rebuilding your environment in alignment with your purpose. And when the space shifts, so will everything else. You can't walk in power while tolerating what poisons you. Curses don't need your permission to stay, they need your silence. But once you decide no more, everything changes. When you break the agreement, when you flush the residue, your freedom begins. Salt becomes your boundary. It says this far and no further. You don't need a crowd to see it or a pastor to bless it. You have been given authority. Use it. Don't wait for permission to do what your soul is already crying out for. That salt in your hand isn't superstition, it's strategy. It's sacred. You are not hoping for deliverance, you are declaring it. And that declaration shifts the atmosphere. You'll feel the difference. Things will lighten. Cycles will crack. And peace will become your new normal. This is not about fear. It's about freedom. And freedom begins with a decision to no longer host what you never invited. You didn't start the curse, but you can end it. There are patterns that blend so deeply into your life that they start to look like personality. You say, this is just who I am, when in reality, it's who the curse trained you to be. But the moment you take action, physical, symbolic, spiritual, you interrupt the pattern. You create a new one. Pouring salt is not foolish, it's focused. It's you reaching into a cycle and cutting the cord. You're not trying to feel different, you're choosing to be different. And every time you act in agreement with freedom, the curse gets weaker. The guilt loses grip. The shame falls silent. You reclaim what was stolen, not with noise, but with spiritual clarity. The toilet is symbolic, it's where waste goes, where things leave. So let them. Don't hold on to what was meant to be flushed. Don't protect what's poisoning you. Break the pattern by choosing new rituals, sacred ones, real ones. Root is rooted in faith, not fear. The old must go because the new is waiting.